Welcome to the Lowdown Mortgage Podcast, the show where we dive deep into the topics that directly impact the evolving originator. I'm your host, Connor Bartley. Bam! And joining me today is someone who has built his business going on 2 decades, spent the better part of that time quietly building one of the most thoughtful client experience systems in the industry, and has reached a point where his phone only rings when it is new business. Cole Holmes, welcome to the Lowdown.
Thank you, Connor. It's great to be here. Am I supposed to like return the high five thing? Is that how that works?
We'll take all the BAMs we can get, man.
All right, very cool. And I think it would be okay to admit to your friends listening right now that you did make an adjustment for me. You were going to introduce Cole, who's been in the business since 1999, and I did ask you not to mention the 1900s word, so I appreciate you doing the 2 decades.
Hey,
but now the cat's
no problem.
out
Out of the bag. Yeah, I mean, I often think about that, like we were talking about right before we started. You know, we're in that demographic where our grandkids are going to say their grandparents were born in the 1900s, and it's just going to sound terrible.
That sounds so long ago.
But I'm gonna hold on to a quarter, and be like, look at this 1900 quarter. So anyway,
all good.
Well, hey,
all good.
I'm excited to have this conversation with you today. It's been fun getting to know you, and I know that you're a really thoughtful guy about the way you've designed your business, and that's one of the things that's really stood out about me and just our conversation. And so, like I mentioned in the introduction, you've been doing this for 2 decades, and as you were kind of going through the business and just getting to know you, you made a comment that there have probably been about 5 moments where you were ready to walk away. Like, what has kept just pulling you back into this love story of mortgage?
Yeah, man, it's interesting. I'm a big believer in the big dude upstairs. I always use this analogy that he's got like this chess match going on, right? And if you allow him to move you where he wants to move you, really cool things can happen. So it felt like each time I was like, I'm done with this. I'm just tired of, whatever was going on at that point during that season in my career. I would somehow end up having like the biggest month year to date or career to date, right? And it was almost like, okay, bro, I get it. This is where you want me. And for some reason, you're going to use me as a lighthouse in this industry to whoever needs that. So yeah, that's probably happened about 4 or 5 meaningful, impactful times that come to mind. So it's kind of cool, I guess, reflecting back.
I can totally relate. Like, my faith is I lean into that quite a bit as well. Very strong with that. And yeah, his plans are perfect and mine are just, I'm just winging it, right? So,
right. Exactly.
So I feel like there have been these moments of just like divine intervention where it feels like, okay, you were right, I'm wrong. I'll just, stop and be obedient and pay attention to what you're trying to tell me. So
yeah.
But that's a great call out. And, there are those moments where we feel like we're at our wits' end, but there can be these reminders that happen along the way that make us go, okay, this is why I'm doing it. And that's always just so rewarding. So anyway, onto your team. This was something that stood out to me is that because on the Lowdown, we talk a lot about building a business to a point where it can be self-sustaining, where the loan officer can get some freedom back into their day-to-day. LOs build and build and build, and a lot of it's just on their own over time. And then eventually the levee breaks, capacity is reached, you can't do anymore. And you've been able to build a team up to where now your personal phone does not ring unless it's just new business. Like, walk me through how you got to that point and what had to break first before you built in that rule.
Yeah, it's simple. It's a simple philosophy. Proactivity prevents reactivity. And that could be preventing reactivity for me, for my processor, for my loan partner, for my realtor partner, for the listing agent, right? For the escrow officer, for my client, or the borrower / home buyer, for like all parties involved. If we can be proactive, if my team and I are proactive, then we're going to prevent reactivity for everyone that's involved on the transaction. So if we prioritize communication, then all parties, it enables all of them to focus on whatever they need to be focusing on instead of stopping, scratching their head and wondering, I wonder if X has been done. I wonder if Y has been done. I wonder if this was received back. It just, I guess the thought of a client finally, after a long day of working their regular job, maybe they're tag teaming with the kids, with the spouse, and getting everybody, and they finally have time at like 9 or 9:30 at night to sit down and look at Cole's email and his honey-do list of things that he needs, or log in and do whatever, and they have a hard stop. Right? They can't. They're not exactly sure what I'm requesting, or they're having trouble logging in, or whatever. That's got to be so incredibly frustrating. So if we can communicate and get as much information out there as possible so that it's at their fingertips, like on their phone, then I just think it creates an amazing experience for all parties involved. So that's kind of where that came from. Is I don't want my phone ringing with questions about the loan process. If we've done that, my team already knows it's going to be huddle time. Cole's going to want to huddle and figure out, like, where did we drop the ball? What can we do going forward to prevent the phone from ringing for that specific question? And then we'll adopt it into our process. And that's kind of how that evolved, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Well, I love the call out on proactive versus reactive communication. Have you identified specific moments within the process where that proactive communication is essential, where you were noticing there was a lot of reactivity, questions were popping up, and you said, you know what, we just
Yeah.
need to make an adjustment right here? And then, and kind of what was that moment and what changed after making the change?
Yeah. The one that really sticks out, that specific moment, as you say, was probably in year 3 or maybe year 4 of my career. I often joke that I spent my first year in the business like 4 to 5 years in a row, right? Because I didn't necessarily learn the things that were necessary to learn. I just kept like repeating things over and over and over again. But the moment that comes to mind, really, it started with the appraisal process. And it seemed like on every single deal, I would get a phone call from my agent, from the buyer's agent, my agent partner, and they would ask me, hey, has the appraisal been ordered yet? And then I would have to stop what I'm doing. I'd reach out to my processor. She would have to stop what she's doing to log in to figure out, okay, has this appraisal been ordered yet? And by the time she figures that out and then gets back with me, and then I get back to my agent, it could be 30 minutes or it could be a few hours, depending on what everybody's got going on. And then I started to really kind of think through, is my agent partner, the buyer's agent, why are they calling me and asking me if the appraisal's been ordered? And the more I thought about it, I discovered it was because the listing agent was calling them. And the listing agent was calling my agent because the seller was kind of on pins and needles, like, hey, where are we at yet? Because they're nervous, right? It's a nerve-wracking process, transaction for everybody. So then I started thinking, by the time that answer got back to the listing agent and the seller, that could be 24, 48, maybe 72 hours. Who knows? And that's got to be really, really frustrating. So just one little tweak that we made is when the appraisal is ordered, we send out an immediate text. And this isn't a group text, like not everybody's held hostage in this group text. We send an individual text to everybody involved on the transaction. So that's both borrowers, husband and wife, or husband and husband, doesn't matter, referring agent, listing agent. We'll even include the escrow officer on most communication that we feel is relevant, for them to know. And it's just something simple. It's, hey, Connor, just want to let you know that the appraisal has been ordered for 1234 Main Street / Smith. And I think, as I shared with you, the reason we use the address and the last name is, like, you and I as mortgage guys, we know everything by borrower last name, right, by the client. But the listing agent and title company know everything by property address. So it just made it easier. And that's another one, because I would get if we did Smith, has been ordered on the Smith transaction, I started getting replies, hey, that's great. Which property is this associated with? I was like, okay, there's another call coming in that's not new business. How can we, make it? So there's been several iterations, but we would end that quick little text with, we will circle back with you as soon as we know when it's been scheduled. So now, because we started getting a text on that. We would get a reply. That's
Mhm.
great. It's been ordered. Hey, when's it scheduled? And we'd be like, crap, let's go figure that out. Well, we don't know yet. So it's just this whole back and forth. So now if I can just like stop all that and say, hey, it's been ordered and we'll circle back. That way they know they don't have to worry about anything. And they know that we're going to communicate to them when it's been scheduled. And then we find out when it's been scheduled. Another update goes out. We will let you know that the anticipated date is April 5th. We will let you know as soon as we receive it. Now everybody can go on and not worry about the appraisal piece. So that's just one little thing that now prevents my phone or my team's phone from ringing or texts or emails coming in about the process. So that's been
Yeah.
very
Okay.
helpful.
What I really pick up on is that you pay close attention to consumer behavior, that you're starting to anticipate what the next question is going to be because you've seen it happen so many times. And so instead of just letting that question happen and then reacting to it, you've become more proactive. And to me, the signal that that sends to your buyer and to your referral partners is Cole really gets me. Like, Cole understands. He's already in my head. How did he know I was going to ask that
Yeah.
question? He's answering it before I asked. And that builds confidence, that builds trust. And so just paying attention to the patterns of the previous transactions that you've had and then making adjustments is really smart. Does that tie into the client times four campaign?
Yeah.
Because you mentioned that to me, and I wanted you to, if I wanted you to give a, I wanted to give you an opportunity to break that down, if you don't mind. Like, what is the client times four campaign?
Yeah, it's simple. It's the client plus the referring agent, usually the buyer's agent, right? And the listing agent and the title rep. The escrow officer or their assistant and the listing agent arguably are the last ones to know anything that's going on a transaction. And that frustrates me for them, right? So if I can go ahead and just include them, then they feel like they're in the know. And the cool thing, I guess, one of the rewarding things about this and what we've done to create this experience, because for me and my team, it's all about the experience, is that we'll get feedback at the end of the transaction from a listing agent. And oftentimes we'll get a listing agent that will say, hey, I've never experienced this kind of communication before. I would love to add you to my list or whatever. I'm like, wow, as a loan officer, you're like, holy crap, that's amazing,
Bingo.
right? But we'll get feedback like, because I'll ask them, hey, that is so amazing. I really appreciate that. Can I ask you why? What was it about those text alerts or the communication that you really appreciated? And 9 times out of 10, it's exactly what I mentioned earlier. They'll tell me, you know what? Anytime my seller client had a question, I could just say, hold on, Cole texted me earlier. And they would look at their phone and they would have the answer there. And I was like, I didn't even really think through, like that wasn't the ultimate goal. But then when I hear that feedback, I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool. The listing agent was able to answer their seller's question because the mortgage dude sent them an update, via text or whatever. It just included them, like cared about them. So that's kind of how that whole thing evolved, and it's still evolving today. But it's fun when you get that kind of feedback, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, it sounds like over time you've really just mastered the art of communication throughout the transaction in a way that builds trust and confidence in all parties involved,
Mm.
which is going to be essential for building new relationships moving forward and helping kind of grow the business. So you've become so much so of an expert, I guess. You have
Well, thank
started
you.
teaching classes. Yeah, you started teaching classes for loan officers at your company that you call intentional vagueness and
Mm.
selling the open.
Yeah.
If you could explain both those ideas in 60 seconds, like how would you explain that?
Well, I'll answer your question with a question first. So, loan officers, or we'll say salespeople in general, I think really miss this. So, question is, in your opinion, what's the main goal of that first initial contact when you're trying to reach out to a new referral source? In this case, we'll use real estate agents. If you're trying to get in with a real estate agent or do business or whatever, that very first outreach contact, what is the main goal with that particular contact?
I'll give you the rookie response. The main goal is to set the meeting.
Okay. And that's a fair answer, right? Because
Mhm.
that's what most of us think. And that's what I thought for probably a decade, right? The main goal is to establish two-way communication. Simple. That is it. All you want to do in that first contact, whether that's a text or a voicemail or an email, you just want them to engage. So that's selling the open per se, is I just want them to open my text and read it. I want them to open my email and read it. I want them to listen to my voicemail. And then I want them to engage. I want them to respond. So often, you've heard the show up and throw up phrase before, I'm sure, right? So often we will put everything we can think of in that first email or that first text. And if we give them everything, then they're not going to need us for anything. So this is where kind of the intentional vagueness comes into play. So just think about it. Number one, I'm selling the open. I want them to open my text and actually read it. I want them to open my email and actually read it. So I'll give you an example of a text. I do a lot of presentations at a local wine club that we're members of here. So when I'm doing some marketing or trying to get some butts and seats, get some agents there. We'll look at it this way. So if you're an agent that I'm reaching out to and I would like for you to come to this presentation, if I sent you a text that was like, hey, Connor, my name is Cole Holmes. I'm a loan officer with Waterstone Mortgage. I've heard so many great things about you, blah, 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 blah. You already lost me. Or in that case, I already lost you, right? Mm-hmm. You're super busy. You're a top producer. You're productive. You got things going on. That immediately signals, okay, this is a sales call and Cole might be a great dude. I'm biased. Cole's an amazing guy, if I'm being honest, right? But I just don't have time, right? So contrast that with if you're a real estate agent, hey, Connor, are you familiar with Courtney Benson? And I just leave it at that. And if you're a real estate agent in the DFW area, and if you've ever logged on to TikTok or Facebook or Instagram, you're probably familiar with Courtney Benson. So that's the intentional vagueness, right? I haven't said anything about a presentation. I haven't said anything about, hey, I'm a loan officer. I haven't said anything at all about that. It's just, hey, Connor, are you familiar with Courtney Benson? And of course, you're probably going to respond and you're going to say, oh my God, yeah, she's awesome. Why? Or you might say, I'm not sure. Should I? Whatever. Part two of that is, and I don't know how far you want me to go into this, but part two of that is being extremely efficient. So I have, in that particular scenario, I will have already typed out at least 2 responses, and I hold that in my notes app on my phone because I know that the response is going to be either, yeah, she's awesome. Why? Or no, I'm not familiar with her. Should I be? It's going to be one of those 2. So I'm going to go ahead and type out a response that would be applicable to that and have that in my phone notes. The reason that I do that is I'll usually send out probably 20 to 30 of these texts whenever I'm doing a presentation. And someone might respond within 30 seconds, 30 minutes, 4 hours, the next day. I don't want to have to try and remember the perfect reply that I did when it was top of mind. So I'm just going to save that in my phone. I can copy and paste. I might change 1 or 2 words and then it's off, right? So I probably went a little bit further into that than you wanted me to, but that's kind of selling the open. And then some intentional vagueness is don't give them everything in that first text or first email or first voicemail, just enough to kind of intrigue them.
Yeah, you open up the curiosity gap, you invite a response back, and then you start having a conversation. And once they're engaged, now there's an opportunity to turn that into more engagement and have, a real conversation. So I think it's really smart.
Yeah.
You mentioned something in that you hold these presentations at a wine club, and we've talked about this where you keep these intentionally very small, maybe 8 to 12 guests that join. I think conventional thinking is bigger is better. Let's pack the room. Let's get as many people there. But you have found that maybe smaller has been more powerful. Like, what's the impact of hosting a smaller event?
Well, I wish that I could say originally I was very intentional with that size, but to be honest, it's really the max that the room will hold that I do these in. But what I have found is keeping it between 8 to maybe 14. Average, there's probably 10, somewhere around there. but it's just a lot more intimate setting. I'm not the guy that gets up at the front of the room and is just like this big, look at me. I've got all this great presentation and I'm walking around as tall as I can. I'm usually sitting down with them. It's a little more casual, but it's meaningful, right? It's intentional. But keeping it at a smaller group allows me to really kind of engage and really keep eyeballs on everyone in there and see their reaction. And I think it's harder, if I'm being honest, for an agent to drift when the classroom size or the attendees are down to like 8 to maybe 10 people. It's harder for them to pick up their phone and kind of lose interest and start kind of drifting away because of how small the class is. So it's worked really well for me. And yeah, I enjoy that more than a room of 20, 30, 40, 50.
Yeah, I mean, when it's so large, it's overwhelming to work the room, and you'll ultimately get pulled into 3 or 4 conversations that take up the entire time, right? And then you've got,
Yeah.
20 other people there that you didn't even get a chance to really talk to and communicate with. So I think it's really smart to just have a more focused, smaller group that you can really work the room with
Yeah.
and have time with everybody while you're there. You mentioned in the past that one of the traps that loan officers can find themselves, fall into is that they feel like they have to know everything before they start to
Mm,
prospect. Like they've just got to be a total, incredible expert on all products and programs before they're ever going to make that call. It's kind of just like a paralysis by analysis
yeah.
scenario. What does the alternative to that look like? Like, what's a good first meeting when you don't have all the answers?
Well, if I'm being honest, even if you're in your 15th meeting, you're still not going to have all the answers. You know, I'm 2 decades into this business, and there's new products and programs and unique little things that are coming out all the time that I don't know everything about. It took me a number of years to be comfortable in my skin, right? I admitted I did my first year like 4 or 5 years in a row. So I was right there. But this is one of the hurdles, the mindset hurdles that I see with, at least with our newer loan officers. And I think we've got 250 loan officers across the entire country, right? And so when I'm doing presentations or talking with them, those are some of the questions that I'll get. Or I'll get an email or a call or something from one of our new loan officers, and they'll ask me, hey, can you tell me everything that you know about the down payment assistance program or about the physician program or whatever? I'm like, no, here, use Google's like your best friend, number one. But number two, what I have found is in those meetings, and I'm just going off of like experience when I think back through, is agents are going to ask you things that they either feel like they should ask because they don't know anything else to ask, or they had one person ask them about this particular program, or they heard about this program. So when the conversation in that first meeting starts to kind of get a little stale, if you will, they might say, hey, really looking for a lender that does these physician loans. Do you guys do those? And if you haven't done one or you're not familiar, you're like, oh. So that might cause you to hold off on scheduling meetings with agents until you know like everything. So what I learned to do is just answer a question with a question. And if you asked me about this physician loan, my first question would be like, that's great. Yes, we do offer those, but I'm curious, are you working with a lot of physicians? Is that like a big part of, your business and your clientele? 9 times out of 10, 9.5 times out of 10. No, I haven't worked with any physicians yet, but I'd really like to. I heard about this program. Like, oh, okay, yeah, that's great. That is a great program for physicians, and I can get you some more information on that. But it's like you name it. It's like one of the new hot topics for programs is the DSCR loan. And if you don't know how to do that quick calculation and kind of explain it, you could really kind of fumble through it. But how many agents have actually closed a transaction with a buyer that used the DSCR loan? Not many. I mean, you could probably count on one hand how many agents that have specifically used this program, right? So do not wait until you know every single program to start scheduling these meetings. It would be just like if you asked them, what's the benefit of retaining mineral rights if you're a seller right now? That was a hot topic like 15 years ago, but now it's
Mhm.
like, so it's like little things like that. How do you get around a seller client that went through a divorce and there was a death and now there's heirs and whatever. Is that complicated? Like if you asked an agent that, they'd be like, okay, I'm going to call my title attorney and get some answers for you, right? They don't know all the answers either. So it is so easy to just answer a question with a question and then tell them if that's really, really important to you, I'll have some information for you by tomorrow. Something simple like that,
Yeah.
right? You don't need to know everything.
Well, it's a really smart just habit to get into. In the art of conversation, the person asking the questions is the one that's in control of the conversation. So if you're ever in a situation where you feel like you're losing control of this conversation, ask a question, and you're suddenly kind of getting back in the driver's seat because
Yeah,
you're in control of
you're
what's going to be
redirecting.
discussed. Absolutely. So really
Absolutely.
smart. So, Cole, we've talked about a lot. I want to give you an opportunity as we sort of wrap up here to speak your mind. If there's anything that we haven't had a chance to discuss, or if there was something that you were hoping to talk about here today, I want to have you, open the floor up to you and give you an opportunity.
Man, I appreciate it. The only thing that comes to mind is much like you, I've launched a podcast as well. Mine is geared more towards real estate agents. It's Collaborate with Cole. You can find it on YouTube. And it's really all about agents helping agents. So I would ask any loan officer friends that are listening to this right now, if there's an agent that you know of that is doing something very unique to either grow their business or create some incredible efficiencies using AI or systems or anything like that, any kind of cool techniques, I would love to interview them. And I would 100% highlight the loan officer that referred them and kind of reinforce that relationship. But I do these nationwide. In fact, I've only interviewed, I think, 2 local DFW agents. Most of them have been nationwide. And there's some really cool content in there that's really beneficial, really helpful for real estate agents, whether it's geo farming techniques or using AI for systems or exploding their Google business profile. I've been blessed to get face to face or virtually flat face to flat face with a lot of top producing agents that have some really, really cool empire building secrets that they've shared on that podcast. So I would love an introduction to another guest.
Yeah, that's great. I'll make sure to include a link to that podcast in the show notes. So if you're listening to this and you want to follow Cole on Collaborate with Cole, check the
Cool.
notes. But Cole, thank you for joining the Lowdown. Thanks for being a part of this conversation and just kind of sharing your story and some of the things that you're working on that are really helping you out in your business and some of the great things that have kind of been turning points for you. So I just really appreciate you being on, man.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you giving me some space on your show. You've had some rock star guests, some loan officers that I look up to in the industry. So I appreciate your interest in giving me a little bit of space in Connor's amazing podcast world here. It means a lot. I really appreciate it.
The jury's still out on amazing podcast world, but I appreciate the plug.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
thanks, man. Best of luck to you.
Appreciate you. Thanks.